getting started is we're gonna open up this latch, but you see here it's actually locked. So in that box, so you can set some stuff down if you need.
Yeah.
In the box here, there's a key. The key for the airplane. So we'll take the key out. I don't want to lose this sheet. That goes back in. So we have 2 keys here. One should be for the doors and one should be for the actual airplane to start. So I'm gonna put it in, unlock it, and now we can get in.
All right.
So I'm gonna set the key down every time, either up top here or on the bottom there. We don't want to keep it in the ignition, just for a number of reasons, which we'll get into later.
Sure.
I'm gonna set this down, and I'm gonna meet you on the other side.
Okay. Should I put this in the...
Yeah, you can set that down on the seat there. So you can actually stand on the other side still.
Oh.
I'm just gonna meet you on this side.
Gotcha.
Okay, so very first things, we get in the airplane. This is, we see what it looks like.
Yeah.
We're gonna start our pre-flight inspection. So here we have a checklist. Oh, just about every airplane should have one in these side pouches, okay? So in the checklist, I'm gonna kind of show you the checklist because you're gonna wanna use this. Over time, you'll start to get familiar with everything and you may be able to kind of do your own flow of a pre-flight and just verify it with the checklist. So I'll kind of show you a little bit of both today.
Sure.
So starting here, it says pre-flight / walk around, which is exactly what we're doing. And we're starting in the cockpit. So the very first thing, it says book / hobs, right? Well, inside we did those times, but now that we're here at the airplane, we open this sheet up and we have the hobs in and the tack in. So we just want to verify that these are accurate from the last person. So this right here is the tachometer, the RPM gauge, just like your car. And this is the tack time. So right here, it's, I don't know if you can see that, the 1115 verify that. And then the hobs time is over here. It says total hours, so 4973.4. So you just want to verify those are actually correct.
Okay.
You never know, maybe the last guy just accidentally put the wrong one in.
Right.
So that's good. We can set this, usually I just throw it in the back or something. We don't really need it now.
Okay.
The next thing we're gonna have, we did book, hobs, and we did times. So that's what we just checked. Now we have documents, and it says arrow. So the documents, every airplane needs to have its documents. Just like your car, or motorcycle, or trailer you own, you gotta have a registration, certificate, and all these other things. So an airplane also has a registration, and it also has what's called an airworthiness certificate. So right down here, right by that left pedal, you can see those 2 pieces of paper.
Sure.
It says airworthiness, and right behind it is the registration certificate. So you always want to make sure those are in there.
Okay.
And that's part of this ARROW. It's like an acronym. So airworthiness, registration. The O stands for operating handbook. So right behind your seat, actually it's on my seat. You can actually move these forward here. But on my seat we have the operating handbook.
Okay.
And the W for the acronym is weight and balance.
Okay.
And every airplane here should have a weight and balance in the POH.
Okay.
So that's good there. So now that we've done that, it says control lock, we can remove. So the control lock you see here, it's actually latched in here. If you want to go ahead and remove that, just kind of lift it up. It may take a little, you gotta wiggle it. Yeah. I usually throw it in the side pouch or something there so it's out of the way.
Gotcha.
Now our flight controls aren't locked in place.
Okay, gotcha.
We just do that for parking, for obviously if it gets windy out, it's not blowing everything around.
Yeah.
Not damaging anything.
Cool.
So control lock's removed. Now it says master on. So this is something I do want to talk about. This checklist, you're going to see it says master on, and there's all these things we're going to check. But I don't really like leaving a battery on for any extended period of time. So I'm going to kind of show you what I like to do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the battery on, which is over here. I'm going to bring the battery switch on. Okay. And now I'm going to turn, here's our light switches. Do you see these?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn all of our lights on. Okay, and you can turn both of these on. They're split switches. It's for the alternator and battery, but you don't have to turn them both.
Okay.
It's fine if you do. So now we have our flap lever here. I'm gonna pull this all the way down. And right behind your head, you're gonna see the flaps actually come down.
Oh yeah.
So, like I said, I don't wanna leave the battery on for an extended period of time. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna just run around not run, but walk around the airplane and check all the lights.
Okay.
So if you wanna do that with me, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. Starting on your wing here, we have the landing light on here.
Okay.
Walking around the edge, each wingtip has its own set of lights. We have a strobe. Looks like this light might be out, but that's for nighttime use only. So
Okay.
we're there.
All right.
We have the beacon light, another nav light on the back, and then on the other wingtip, you should have another strobe light. Watch your eyes, and that light there is working for navigation as well at night.
All right.
So now, if you want to go back to the other side and go ahead and just click the battery master button. So you can turn those 2 red switches off. And then go ahead and turn all of these lights off except for the BCN, which is the beacon. Good. Now the reason I like to leave this on is for the sake of, say I finished my pre-flight, you're hanging out for a few minutes, you run in to use the restroom or something. Maybe you forgot to accidentally turn the battery off, but if you leave this light on, it's on top of that tail. So essentially if you walk away, you should see that light and it's an indicator, oh man, I left the battery on, let me go back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that way in case you ever forget it.
Okay.
So, coming back to our checklist, we have the master on, and you can see we kind of just ran through a bunch of this already, but master on, fuel gauges, something else we should definitely check when we turn the battery on. Up here, we have engine gauges. They're all different things. So we have oil temperature, pressure. We have the vacuum, which is for the flight instruments. That's not going to come up right now. The amperage is for the alternator, for like our battery. And then up here we have fuel gauges. So if we turn these on, we can see the right one comes up and the left one's actually not right now. That's why, truthfully, don't worry about the fuel gauges, because we're going to visually verify the fuel physically.
Okay.
All right, so battery's back off. We're good there. So it says fuel gauges. We just checked ignition mags. So this is just the key. It's making sure the key is out of the ignition. The reason for that is because if somebody just flew this airplane and it's still pretty hot, maybe there's still some fuel left over in the engine there, and you accidentally go walk around that propeller and you can move it around a little bit, it's directly connected to this engine. So what the magnetos are doing is they're actually providing its own spark to the engine, even when the battery's off. So that what it means is you could accidentally, in theory, the airplane could start on its own just by moving that propeller. So you really want to be careful. Always run a propeller. Make sure the keys are out at all times. Make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so that's a big deal there.
Sort of like a car popping a clutch, getting
Exactly.
started,
It's actually the exact same idea, same
Yeah.
concept,
Yeah.
right? So you just always want to treat that propeller like it's potentially hot, you should say.
Okay.
So, lights, so ignition mags, we checked that. The avionics switches are right here. It says avionics master. They're both off. The avionics, what they do is power the GPS, our radios and all that good stuff. Just making sure they're off.
Okay.
Somebody didn't leave them on from before.
Right.
Circuit breakers, these are kind of like our fuses. So these little circular things, I just like to run my hand across, make sure they're all flush. We got a few up here. If any of them were to be popped, they would obviously pop out like a blown fuse. So you just want to make sure of that.
Okay.
Good. And see how it says lights on? It says beacon on. Well, we just did the lights and we just checked them, right?
Okay.
So throttle and mixture, we have throttle and mixture here. So as we know, the throttle is going to control the power and the RPM, just like your gas pedal would in your car, right? The mixture here is the fuel to the airplane, the engine, I should say. So the fuel, basically when we're doing our pre-flight, we want to make sure that these are both fully out and that they're not pushed in right now.
Okay.
That's all it is. But this is going to control the power and this is going to control the fuel. As we know, as you climb in altitude, the air becomes much more thin, right? So because of that, we'll actually use less fuel when we're up at altitude to get that proper fuel air burn, that fuel air mixture running in the engine. That we'll get into much later, bigger stuff.
Okay.
But they're both out and cut off. The flaps, I already went ahead and did that. Like I said, see how it goes from here all the way down? I just don't like having the battery on for prolonged periods of time.
Right.
So we did flaps down, and so it says trim here. So trim is this bad boy here. It says neutral. Just verify it's neutral. So it's in the takeoff position, that little white indicator.
Okay.
We just want to verify that's in the neutral position before we really get in the airplane and start doing anything. We'll talk more about trim when we're actually in the airplane flying. Fuel selector. So fuel selector is right here, and it is down on both. So the major difference between the Piper and the Cessna is the Piper, the wings are down low, right? And this one, the wings are up high. So the Piper, for the fuel to get to the engine up front in the Piper, it needs to fight against gravity, right? So it uses a fuel pump of some kind to draw the fuel to the engine. Now this, the wings, the fuel's up high and the engines down low, so we can actually use gravity to feed the fuel down in. So in this airplane, we can burn off both tanks at the same time. The Piper can only do one tank at a time. That's one of the major differences there between the two.
Interesting.
Yep. So we just want to make sure that this is down on both, because as you notice, we could switch it to each tank if we wanted to, but really we have no reason to do that, so we should always leave it on both.
Okay.
All right. Fire extinguisher, we do have one of those located between our seats here. It's in the green there, making sure that it's checked and verified in case for whatever reasons we had some sort of fire. Good there. Parking brakes off. There's a parking brake equipped in this airplane. I just like to say if it's flowing with the dash like this, it is off. If it was down, it's on. In these airplanes, they're all used for flight training, obviously. We don't use the parking brakes ever. If we need to stop, we can use our normal braking, right? Yeah. We don't need to use the park. So it should always be off, but, you know, always double check it.
Okay.
Parking brakes off, and it says lights, walk around now. See how long that could take? Just sitting there with the battery on, killing it?
Yeah,
so
sure.
I just like to show people right out of the gate, you know, look, when you turn that battery on, just turn your lights on, bring the flaps down, and just walk around. That's all you got to do. Come back in, turn it back off. We don't want to really be draining the battery too much.
Okay.
Okay, good. So we did the lights, and the master would be back off, and we would turn our lights back off.
Okay.
All right, so now we've completed the cockpit checklist. We did our documents, we did the control lock, we did our lights, flaps, throttle mixture, everything. So now we're going to go out to the front of the airplane and start on the nose.
All right.
As I had mentioned in the beginning, when I had said we're going to use the checklist, over time you will kind of develop your own sort of flow of your walk around, and you know, you always have a checklist obviously, but you can always kind of check and then verify, I should say, for your pre-flight at least.
Okay.
So here we're going to start on the nose, and it says static opening, windscreen, cowling, nose wheel. So I'm going to show you exactly. So the very first thing is, you see these covers here?
Yeah.
These are called cow plugs. We can go ahead and remove those. You can pull those out.
For the birds.
Yep, exactly. And right now, this time of year, they're really bad.
Are they?
Yeah, they're really bad. Now that we're into spring. So always kind of take your head down and peek in there. You can actually see pretty far. And just make sure that there's no bird's nest or anything like that.
Yeah.
You can even see a couple spark plugs, you know, a little part, you know, things like that, making sure nothing's loose falling out.
Cool.
On this side here, we also have the alternator belt. We're going to want to make sure that that's on snug, and you can even give it a little pull just to make sure it's good tension. Yep. You know, if it was really loose or something like that, that would be an obvious indicator, like, hey, look, let's get it looked at, right?
Totally.
Pretty straightforward. Looking at the windscreen, we just want to make sure that it's not cracked or anything like that. No damages that would affect us while we're flying. Windscreen's good. So cowling, we just checked. So now, as I check the windscreen, I even looking at my screws here. Cowling. I want to look at my propeller as well. As I just mentioned, you know, be very careful around this. We don't want to really be moving it around at all. But we do want to just verify that each edge is nice and straight. There's no major cracks or damages. You know, kicking up rocks or something like that. So just making sure each side is, you know, nice and straight, you know, no major damages, I should say.
Okay.
Coming straight down, we have an air filter here. Obviously, air needs to get into the engine for it to operate properly. So we want to just make sure that this wasn't damaged or something was blocking it up in any kind of crazy way. So now as I check that, I'm actually going to come all the way down, and I'm looking at my nose wheel here, right? So it's same thing, this is a tire. Make sure it has tread and it's not flat. And actually right above this tire, we have this thing here, which we call our strut. I like to verify I have at least 3 fingers, because this is sort of acting like it's just a suspension for us. So when we're, you know, landing especially, maybe we come down a little bit hard, this kind of acts as like a cushion, so it's not really damaging anything up here, right? So we want to make sure that that's not like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So strut is complete, so now I'm going to come back to my checklist. Windscreen, cowling, nose wheel, strut, propeller, and spinner. I didn't say anything about this, but maybe go ahead and just run your hands across, make sure these screws aren't loose, wiggling their way out. You know, if it hit the windshield, it'll crack it.
Okay.
Propeller, alternator belt, we checked that. Air filter. And it says oil here, fuel strainer and access cover. We'll go ahead and do that now. So my flow, typically I check the oil at the very end, but let's go ahead and just do it now. So right here we have the oil. You go ahead and just push this button, it opens up this latch, and we have a dipstick here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. and we need to verify the amount of oil in the airplane every time before we fly. So we should have a minimum of 6 quarts in this airplane, if I can find it. There's the 8. So now I'm looking for a 6. Do you see the 6 right there?
I do not.
There's a 6 right where I'm pointing. Do you see it?
No.
Do you see the 8?
Oh, there we go.
So there's the 8. There's a 6. Do you see the 6?
Yeah.
So it looks like it's about 6 1/4,
Okay.
which is perfect.
Okay, great.
As long as it's above 6,
Okay.
then we're good. If it's below 6 and you're out here doing your pre-flight, we could just add a quart of oil.
Okay.
No big deal.
Cool.
And we usually always keep oil in the baggage, which I'll show you here in a minute. But yeah, we would just add a quart of oil. We have a funnel and everything like that.
Okay.
Just to talk about it too, because I know a lot of times people will pre-flight when they're starting out and they look at this and they're like, what the heck is this thing, right?
Yeah.
All this is this is for cabin air. So inside we can open and close this to allow airflow to get inside for hot, it's basically our climate control, right?
Yeah.
So that's all, it's air conditioning. So that's all that is. So if you see it open, it's not a problem at all.
Okay.
So sometimes it may be closed, sometimes it may be open.
Okay.
Do you have any questions so far?
I do not.
Okay. Like I said, if I'm talking a little fast or going a little bit too in depth, let me know.
No, it's perfect. And like I said, I'm recording this, so I get to review it and
Good.
make sure I got it down.
Hopefully I'm not saying anything stupid.
No, not at all.
All right, so like I said, when I start my pre-flights, I start at the front and I'm coming around all the way around the airplane.
Yep.
So right here, we just want to check this. This is called the static port here. Very important. So this is going to control a few of our flight instruments inside the airplane. One of the most important is going to be our altimeter. And what the altimeter is doing is reading the outside air pressure. As we climb and descend, it's going to change, which allows us to get a proper reading of how high above the ground we are. So essentially, if there was any kind of, say it was the winter time, maybe this iced over, maybe there was something, debris blocking this, we want to make sure that that little teeny tiny, if there's like a small hole right there, just that there's nothing blocking this, basically.
Air goes in there and it measures it.
Exactly, that's exactly what it's doing. So now right here we have another cover. Let's go ahead and remove that. Just the Velcro that goes around the back there. Yep. And you can pull that off. And if your hands are full, you can go ahead and throw those in the back seat if you'd like. Usually I'll throw those in the back. Good. Okay, so we covered the static port. One other thing here is we have some vents in the wing here for air to flow through, once again for the cabin air.
Okay.
Now this is called our pitot tube, and this is going to be very important as well. So static port and pitot tube. Now these are kind of interconnected in a way, but this is going to be mostly important for our airspeed indicator inside of the airplane. So essentially, as we go faster and roll down the runway, for example, we're starting to go against the air, right? So as air flows through here faster and faster and faster, it directly drives the airspeed indicator and makes it come to life.
Yeah.
So the important thing here is that this hole is obviously not clogged or blocked by any debris. It's why we keep a cover on it at all times. So that's for our airspeed indicator.
Okay.
If you'll notice too, there should be an actual very small hole at the bottom, and that would be our drainage hole. Something we shouldn't have to worry about ever, but let's just say that it was freezing outside and there was moisture in here and it did freeze. Well, if this freezes up, then the airspeed is no longer working. In order for that to clear out, these actually are heated, so we can turn the heat on if we wanted to and melt the ice, but then there's all that water, so the water would drain out of that small hole at the bottom. So that's what that's for.
Cool.
Like I said, something we shouldn't have to encounter, but and just talking, understanding it, like what does it mean and what is it doing for us.
So is there a button that turns on the heat thing?
There is.
Yeah.
So actually inside there, right next to our lights, we have the pitot heat switch, which will turn it on and it starts warming this up. Normally, I don't fly with it on because days like today when we're not flying into precipitation or any kind of moisture,
Sure.
shouldn't be needed.
Sure.
So, I don't even think this is on the checklist, but I just like to talk about it. This is kind of our strut connecting our wing to the body of the airplane. Yeah, I just like to give it a nice little shake that nothing's loose or rattling around, right?
Yeah.
We can now go ahead and remove this strap. These are just basic straps. There's a button here. I just push it and loosen it.
Okay.
And we can go ahead and take that off.
All right.
So I'll just kind of lay it on the ground here. As I come on down, we have the leading edge of the wing. Pretty straightforward, just no major dents, damages, anything like that. There's also this teeny tiny hole as well I do want to talk about. This is actually what we call for our stall warning horn. So you can just see it's a slot of air that allows air to flow through there. Once again, we just don't want this to be covered. Okay, so I'm not going to get too much into detail about stalls right now. Probably in the next few lessons we'll definitely actually go out and practice them, and we'll go through that another time. That way I'm not talking too much right now.
Okay.
But once again, just make sure it's not clogged or anything like that.
Okay.
So now as we come around, we checked our lights already. We have the outside of the wing. Right here we have these two little antennas. They're called static wicks. So essentially, what these are for is for static discharge. I'm not trying to get too in the weeds here. Basically, just want to make sure that these are not damaged in any kind of way. Next, we have our aileron here. So we know the ailerons are going to allow us to roll the airplane while we're up in the air, right? So that's controlled by our yoke. So I actually am going to make sure that they're moving free and correctly. So you can even give it a feel, put your hand there, just up, down, all the way. Yep. Very good. And also, while I do it, I know you're a little bit taller, but if you don't mind standing under here, you can actually see there's some hardware I'd like to verify as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. I like to make sure that all those are there and in place.
Okay.
And 1, 2, 3, 4 down here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 in here.
Okay.
And this bolt right here, for whatever reason, we just want to make sure that it actually has a little bit of wiggle room to it. So I usually always hold this up with my left hand, and then that way if a gust of wind comes through, it doesn't move. You see what I'm saying? That could really hurt you. So you want to make sure that you hold this with one hand and just make sure that bolt has a little wiggle.
Okay, gotcha.
So the hardware is good. The flight control is free and correct. We checked it both ways. I'm coming on down even more. Now we have our flap. So the flap's going to be used to help us take off and land essentially. So when we're down here checking it out, there's a couple things we're looking for. So we have 2 tracks on each side here. We want to make sure that nothing's obstructing those tracks to allow, for them to travel, right? Also, while I'm standing down here, I'm even going to give it a little bit of it should have a little wiggle room to it. Obviously, it shouldn't move like the aileron does, right? So if this thing were to move the whole way up and whole way down, we got a problem, right? Same thing with the aileron. There's this little bolt here. It should just have a little wiggle room to it. It shouldn't be stuck or anything like that.
Okay.
Now that we're getting on down here, all right, we have our tire, another tire, right? So same thing, tire pressure, tread on the wheel. And on this side, you can actually see the brake pads. So we have the disc, and we have brake pads on each side, right? We just want to verify that it's not down to the metal, right?
Yeah.
This here is our brake line. If it was damaged in any kind of way, we would see brake fluid leaking out or something like that, which would be a big indicator of, hey, we got a problem, right?
Yep.
All this here is pretty much cosmetic, mostly. So if you see a couple cracks, things like that, it's not really a huge deal. It's all cosmetic.
That's okay.
Like that. Yeah, it's totally okay. Inside of here, there's an actual structural piece that's totally, like I said, this is just cosmetic.
Okay.
So we'll come back to the back of the wing. Always watch your head while you're standing up, because it
trust
will
me,
happen
I do.
eventually.
Being as tall as I am, I'm always.
Yep. So now that we're on the back side, I also just like to, take a look at everything, making sure nothing's something that I missed from underneath.
Yeah.
Over here we have the baggage door on this airplane. So 2 buttons. Big button opens, so I push it open and open it up. And inside here is where I mentioned we usually keep a quart of oil. There should be a funnel, which I don't see one. Actually, there is. Oh, no. Don't see a funnel right now. Keep oil. We also have a tow bar. These airplanes don't have reverse, right? So we have to push them by hand. So to open it's the big button, and you see that little button there? That will latch it.
Okay.
So we always want to make sure this is latched before we get in and go, right? Very easy mistake to make.
Same thing.
So, yep, this is actually a backup static port. So essentially, if that one were to be having any issues, we would have an alternate static source. So that way, we could switch over to standby, basically.
Okay.
Now that we're standing here, on top of the airplane, we have those 2 antennas. Those are used for radio communications and things like that. I just want to make sure those aren't damaged in any kind of way, as well as our rear windshield. And now we're going to come around to the back of the airplane. And this is our elevator. This controls our pitch up and down, obviously. So I'm just going to make sure it's free and correct once again. This one's got a little more weight to it. It may want to fall down. And you can also see there's a little bit of hardware on each side there. Right there. Should be another one over here, like a bolt. So everything looks good there, up and down, all the way. Yep. And then here we have our rudder. So this controls the yawing motion of the airplane with our feet, right? So when we're steering on the ground, we use our pedals. And it moves this left and right to allow us to steer.
Okay.
So when you're checking this out, you can see that there's a cable on the left-hand side there and on the right-hand side. So if you were to take a look at this and see if those cables were frayed up or anything like that, looked like there was some damage to them, that's a big indicator we should get it looked at, right?
Okay.
So we just want to always look at these things before we fly, every time. So while I'm down here, I'm going to remove that tail tie-down strap. Now, as you can see, there's all these sharp edges, so really be careful. What I like to do is I'll hold this up with one hand, then I kind of reach under here, and I'm going to remove this, and that comes off. That way I don't have to worry about smacking my head. Really don't want to cut myself on this thing.
Yeah, sure.
So now same thing on this side. The elevator's connected the same way on both sides, but I still want to verify that everything looks good over here as well. And while we're doing this one as well, this side of the elevator, we have this slat. This right here, this is our trim tab. As we talked about inside there, that trim wheel. So that trim tab is right here. As I stand on this side, and I go all the way up and all the way down, you can sort of see this kind of flow with the travel. Do you see that there? So I want to make sure it does that, basically. It's not jammed up in any kind of way. Okay. So now we're kind of getting near to the end. We're on the opposite side of the airplane now, right? So I'm going to start on the outside, checking my flight controls, and working my way in the exact same way we just did on the other side. So if you want to, feel free, go ahead and take a look at those ailerons. Just make sure they have some play with them. So the aileron, you can just, it has a little bit of play. The aileron is all the way up, all the way down, and you can walk underneath of it as well. Yep, so we can stand under here. Yep, yeah. We can make sure, yep, that boy has some play to it. You can feel it if you like. I know, you got
the camera, but...
Yeah. Yep, and there's a hardware up here and hardware down there. All 3 spots. Good. And then just verify the track here has not been, basically there's nothing blocking the track there, Right. This bolt should also have a little bit of play. Right. And as you saw, has a little bit of play as well. Right. Our tire, same thing, just always visually check our tire. Good brake pad, brake line, this is cosmetic. Good. So now I still want to check the front of the wing, so I'm going to walk back out. Check the leading edge of the wing again on this side. Everything looks good. We can take this cover off or this strap off here. Just push that button and then it's alright. Here, ready? I think you almost got it. There you go. You got it. Alright, this strut here, not loose, falling off in any kind of way. Good. We already checked our oil. Did this, we know what this is, and we're coming back to the front of the airplane where we started, right? Okay. So we didn't miss anything. Like I said, I realized I totally forgot to reference this checklist the whole time I was doing this. Okay. But right wing, we didn't do the last 2 things we haven't done yet is the fuel, really, that's it. Okay. But we did the vents, the tie down, the lights, static wicks, we checked, ailerons we checked, flaps, main gears, brakes, we didn't sump the fuel yet, antennas, elevator, the trim tab, the tie down, the rudder, elevator, cargo door. So you see how we basically hit every single point on here. I said always have this in case you forget something or you're just unsure. It'll take a little while before you really start to develop, what's going on. But so the last 2 things we have are fuel. So inside of the airplane, open this up, and there's a little stick here. So we have a stick in a jar. So you can close this up. So to close this, I'm just going to push, and then that's your latch. Okay. I'm going to walk to the front. So we want to check the fuel quantity and the quality as well. Remember, I think we did it last time where we checked the fuel.
Yeah, we stirred a little bit out, make sure there's no air bubbles.
Yep, so in this airplane, the fuel tank is right here. And there's like 5 something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to do each one for about 2 seconds. 2 to 3 seconds. You may get a little bit on your hands when you do it. But we can see it's blue. That's the color we want to see.
Okay.
But we can see that there's no water separated at the bottom there.
Yeah.
That's totally good.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure there's not. If there was, we would pretty much dump it out elsewhere.
Okay.
We also have this filter here, so if it's clean like it is, I'm going to dump it back into the airplane through this filter.
Okay.
So to do this, we have to do a little bit of climbing. We have a handle here and a spot for 1 foot and a second foot there. So I'm going to put one hand here, left foot, lunge up, right foot, and the fuel cap is up here.
Okay.
I twist it to take it off. I can visibly see the fuel, so it's topped off,
Nice.
which is good. I will say when you start doing your pre-flights, check the fuel first.
Yeah.
Only because it'd be a shame, I'm glad it's topped off. If we started this, took 20, 30 minutes going through everything, and then find out we gotta wait another 15 minutes for fuel, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm actually gonna hand this jar to you.
All right.
The same 5 point.